This is a show about the diversity of academic and experiential backgrounds of people working in patient safety. My name is Ivan. I am a lab rat turned infection preventionist. While struggling to find work, I reached out to a friend for support. Our chat turned into a LinkedIn post that showed me that many people in our field were in the same situation. The purpose of the Safety Spectrum podcast is to celebrate credential, educational, and experiential diversity, to share the values and success stories of non-traditional staff in quality patient safety and infection prevention, to advocate for competency-based versus credential-limited hiring, and to increase awareness of the importance of the infection preventionist and other roles in the healthcare safety sector.
In a world where entry into your dream job is not clearly educated, a world with credential preference hiring, Amber Taylor took the long way round to get to her dream job. She has an MPH from the University of Michigan, and after several rejections in IP for lack of clinical experience, she worked in public health at state and federal levels. She got her RN from Catawba Valley Community College and has since worked a few unicorn jobs. More significantly, she went back to the University of Michigan to make the way to IP easier for the MPH graduates coming up behind her. Welcome to the Safety Spectrum. Amber, welcome to the show. My guest today is Amber Taylor. She has been an IP for about 10 years. She has worked through all of the things that we think about with regards to becoming an IP. So Amber started out with a Master's of Public Health, and then she transitioned to getting a registered nurse credential in order to get into IP. Amber, you're the second guest that I've talked to who has walked this very long road. So yes. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You wrote a letter that you posted on LinkedIn.
Yes.
And that's how you popped up on my radar. And
great. That was the whole purpose of that. That's what I wanted for people to see. Yes.
So tell us how you got into IP.
Okay. So I originally went to school to be a physical therapist, and that kind of didn't work out. And so I said, I need to do something. And I remembered a subject about epidemiology in my micro class. And so I said, okay, that was something of interest to me. And I applied to 5 grad schools for public health and epidemiology. I got in and I went to University of Michigan, go Blue. All and right. They have a hospital molecular epi program.
Okay.
And I took all the ologies, the bacteriology, virology, immunology, cell biology, all the ologies, right? And including a hospital epi class. And so you think when you come out like, I should get a job.
You are ready to work in the hospital after correct. You've done that.
Life did not happen that way. So I would land interviews. And honestly, in 2000, which I can't believe, 2002, when I graduated, jobs were very plentiful, and public health in general. So I was getting interviews, but I couldn't get past you need the clinical part. It was very RN heavy. And anyway, I went on to do my first job in public health. That was in immunizations in North Carolina. And then I went on to do a leadership program in DC. And finally, I started HAI work in South Carolina. South Carolina was one of the first states to do HAI reporting. So we had a state action plan, and I was on the state, HAI committee board. And NHSN at that time was pretty much voluntary, and actually it was called something else. And as a new state to mandatory reporting, NHSN and me and Dixie Robert, who was our leader at the time, worked together to kind of make that work. There were things that they knew. Mm-hmm.
You built NHSN for us.
Not quite, but I added some expertise, some hands-on. This is not happening.
You were one of the early adopters, so some of the work that you did is what kind of steered NHSN in the direction that it's gone.
I was,
That's very exciting. Good for you.
I was using NHSN when you could still call the help desk. So
now there is no help desk.
No, there is no. You email now, and we'll get to that later.
All right.
But I did HAI work at the state level for about maybe like 3 years or so, and then we moved for my husband's job. He works in manufacturing. And no, I take that back. I had another job. I went to DC and worked on HAI policy.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So,
and that was with DHHS?
Yes, it was at that time was the Office of Healthcare Quality. And while I was there, it got folded into the Office of like Health and Promotion. So it got pulled into another office, but still dealt with quality. And there, the National Action Plan was. So we were working on that when they had public comments. And there's also a wonderful video. They even still use it in my hospital's orientation called Partnering to Heal.
Okay.
And so my colleagues, I kind of came in on the back end of when they were doing that, but Partnering to Heal came out of that office where I worked.
Question. Does Partnering to Heal have a scene where a young lady's picking up fruit for a patient? And
no,
is it the one that showed like a yellow glow when?
No, that's another one. I know which one you're talking about. This is the one where I believe a mother or daughter was leaving a parent's room that had some type of had MRSA or something, and then she went and touched all over the place.
Yes,
and a young lady who was there just for a scrape, just for an infection. Ended up getting MRSA and passed away. So very powerful. So that came out of the office.
I use that in orientation too.
Yeah. And lots of hospitals still use it. So it's pretty exciting.
Yes. Wow. And then nursing. All of a sudden you became a nurse?
I did. We moved again from my husband's job, manufacturing. It'll do that for you. And at that time, quite honestly, if I had not gone to nursing school, I really just would have considered myself to be lazy. I mean, I had no excuse, not to go. One income, not fun, but doable at that time. And I did it. I researched the schools. I ended up going to a community college, which initially was not on my radar, right? And I think, and I'll just be honest, and it'll be here for perpetuity, that I was kind of like, going backwards to get an associate. I already have, a master's. But let me tell you, almost 10 years later, I have a much better appreciation. I was humbled by the experience, and I never thought I was better than that. I think I just thought I have a master's, and then I'm going, it felt like going backwards.
Yes.
There were many people in my program who had master's, bachelor's, other degrees.
Really?
Yeah. Lots of second career nurses like myself were in that program. So, I went to nursing school, and I came out doing psych nursing, which I really loved, and was pretty good at. It's not for everyone. But we came back to South Carolina, and I worked in the psych ED. And I was getting a little too old to tussle, I was tussling a little bit, and
wrestling patients and all that.
Yeah. Yes. I was getting a little old for that, and getting a little tired of that. It can take a toll on you in a while. And I just want to say that psych patients are not inherently violent, but things do pop off, and things happen, right? And so sometimes you have to just be prepared, for that to happen. But anyway, a IP position became open at the hospital. I knew the manager because I knew most of the IPs from my previous work.
From your time working in the health department.
Yes.
NHSN.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. And this
Nice.
one in particular, we were friends.
Okay.
And outside of NHSN and all that stuff. And I got an interview, right? She's like, come on, I really want you to come. And, so the interview came open. But believe it or not, so now you're talking 10, 12 years of HI experience, state level, federal level. She was gung-ho about hiring me, right?
Yeah. And you have your nursing credentials.
Yeah, and now I have my nursing credentials. I have all the things. I check the boxes. I've got the data, I've got the clinical. But at a higher level, she kind of got some pushback because I didn't have like that much RN experience. And my RN experience was not what one considers traditionally clinical, right? Psych is a different
you were not clinical enough.
Right. I wasn't clinical enough. I didn't have, part of nursing is critical thinking, right? So that's a big part. And just, I think I didn't quite match the job description the way it was written. I think it was written a little concise, I think, a little tight, I think. And so ultimately, I did get the position. And I kid you not, COVID started like the next week. And I told my husband probably a couple of days in, I said, I might quit my job without a job, for the first time in my life. Now, I've had breaks because we've moved. I've had breaks because I'm starting new positions. I have never taken a break simply because I said I don't
just because this is too much.
This is not working. And that's not my who I am, but I was led there by COVID.
Yeah.
So I worked as an IP during COVID, like for, when did we move? Like a couple years, I think coming up on 2 years. And children's health was my priority. We had a children's hospital. And aside from all just the general IP stuff, right? But children's health were the floors that I had. And I just have to say, and other people have kind of echoed that, children's hospitals are much different, I think, than adult world. I think people are more inclined to do the things that other people maybe find unnecessary, right? So they may be more adherent to the isolations. They may be more adherent to preventing because we know it can go down quickly. But I still learned, but it was kind of trial by fire because we've got COVID on one hand, bringing up all sorts of things you don't think about, like toy rooms and still giving kids the experience of trick or treat and Christmas, and how can we do that? Reverse trick or treating became a thing. Reverse Christmas became a thing.
Wow.
And then
I cannot imagine all of the changes that you had to make to just very standard processes.
Mm-hmm.
I know I worked at a acute care community hospital, and we have a pediatrics unit. We had a pediatrics unit, but it was very small. But even then, we had those questions. What do we do with the toys? And I think the most difficult part for me, it's minuscule compared to the work that you did, was where groups were coming in to donate things for the kids.
Right.
And there are many times when we had to turn them away because they were not sure that all of what they're bringing in is new. We can't wash this. And and it was, so I'm sure you experienced that on a much larger scale.
Oh yeah, we actually had a wing, like a beautiful garden that had been donated and a beautiful playground that pretty much sat unused for a long time because it was like, there are all kinds of things that you don't even, think about.
Yes. Yes.
We made it.
All
We made it.
So you powered through
I did.
your first infection control job during the pandemic. According to your resume on LinkedIn, March 2020, you started. Like that was when things were really
literally.
Yes. I remember March 2020 is probably when we started seeing cases here in the Carolinas. Yes. And so you did that for 2 years, and then you moved to CACA International.
I did.
You kind of got back in touch with your NHSN roots.
I did.
Yes. Tell us about that.
So we moved again. So I saw this job with CACI, and I was like, this is kind of a unicorn job. I can answer NHSN questions and be remote and still do infection prevention.
That's what we all want to do when we grow up.
So I applied, I don't know, probably a Thursday, maybe by Friday, I had an interview, and so was very fortunate to find that job. And I really kind of I enjoyed it, but I will say this. I love CACI, but it's different. And this is not against CACI. This is just in general. When you are doing your interpretation of what you think the definition is, in the hospital, and then you get to NHSN and you're responsible for answering those questions, you realize you may have maybe been misinterpreting some of those definitions, not purposely, but when you have to go through and your job is to understand every definition, every So it was very interesting to kind of see, and say, oh, well, we did this. Yeah, we did it this way at our hospital. This is what we interpret it to be. And so that was good. And so when I was at CACI, CAUTIS was my kind of area of questions that I answered. A little bit of bloodstream infection, mostly primary, but some secondary. And so, yeah, I did that for like a little over a year and a half, I think it was. And then, contracts change, things change. So off the contract. And I kind of, looked for a job more in the new year because it was October-ish when that happened. And then I got this job at where I am now. And it is a very high acute hospital. And so I'm PRN. At first I thought it was a joke. I said, not a joke, but I'm like, is this a real listing? I said, I've never in all my years.
PRN infection prevention.
Yeah.
I'd sign up for that one too.
I saw it on Indeed. And then I also saw it on LinkedIn. I said, okay, must be like legit, right? So I applied and, I got the job. Now, technically it is PRN, but I am there frequently a lot more than that. So for them, PRN really just meant not full time, right? So I was there about 3, in general, without any other day pickup, I'm there 3 days a week. And then when there are things that are amiss or things that need help or things then I do more. So we had someone who was on leave and I went to that hospital for 3 months.
So you're covering multiple hospitals sometimes?
I cover wherever the need is, but Atlanta is my primary hospital.
Okay. Right.
But I can help virtually. I can help virtually other hospitals if need be. But yeah, I went to another hospital for 3 months. There are days when I went to 2 or 3 days to another hospital, and I just really wherever the need is. And it's kind of nice because yes, we're all under the same system, but everybody does things differently. And you're able to kind of say, hey, well, I saw this at this facility. Maybe we can try that here or vice versa.
Trade best practices in-house.
Yeah. Yes. So it's been a very interesting time, but I like it. I think if other hospitals that are large and have large systems like I'm in had kind of PRN IPs, I think they could benefit from that, really.
Just kind of bouncing around. And like you're saying, we're sharing ideas internally. And you're seeing things in real time. Whereas when I've worked in a system, we try to share ideas during a meeting.
Right.
And those things don't always come up. Those things don't always come up. The extent of your experience is so amazing.
Thank you.
You have worked, hospitals and state health departments and federal and it is amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
They're very fortunate.
Yes. We're going to go back a little bit.
Okay.
And what sparked your interest in infection prevention? I know you mentioned that hospital epi course. Is that kind of where the light went on and you went, you know what?
I think that was primarily it, but also my mom spent a lot of time in and out of, she had some health challenges and she was, did dialysis, fortunately at home, but she did have to go to the dialysis clinic, which, as you know, is ripe for infections. And it's kind of like a when and not a if. I mean, I remember one time she had peritonitis, which of course can be very bad. And she actually remembered that she said, she didn't do something right? So even her as a non-clinician knew that I think she had missed some kind of step in the process and not saying that was it, but she was aware that, and she advocated for herself in the hospital. They're like, hey, close the door. This is sterile when you're changing my bags, things like that. So I think that helped a lot because, I saw her, but also the class. And I've always liked, I guess, germs, so to speak, and microbes and science. So through the years, even as a child to an adult, I always knew I would do something in science or healthcare. It may have changed from pharmacists to PTs to this, but I've always just kind of liked germs and microbes. And so infection prevention. And also, honestly, when I went to Michigan, I had intended to potentially get my doctorate like right after, but I decided not to. Michigan and I needed a break, too many colds and bronchitis. And so then I just went head on and just started working, just plowing through. And it was always in the back of my mind. But again, trying to get somebody to give you that first chance. And so I just kind of was on the periphery. I was always like the HEI epidemiologist, the policy person, but not the actual, infection preventionist.
Yes. Okay. You have done a lot to make the way easier for those behind you.
I try.
And you have done a lot.
Okay, well, thank you.
You have done a lot. So tell me about some of that work. So going back to your open letter, you talked about your conversations with your alma mater, with
yes.
Michigan.
Yes.
So tell us how that came about.
Okay, so about 10 years in, so I was working at DC at the time on HI policy, and I'm not sure what sparked it, but I just said, we are doing our students a disservice if we're graduating them with a hospital molecular epi, concentration, right, in epidemiology. They're not able to go out and just get that IP job,
but
right?
They cannot work in a hospital afterwards.
Right. It seems like it, right? It seems like that. And and at that time, I myself was looking at USF and their infection control certificate. And I just said to them, just kind of as an alum, hey, I've seen this program at this school. I don't know what your thoughts are. And I actually just sent it to like the main, I don't even know who I sent it to, probably like the secretary or like just the main epi number email. And,
so just to the department itself.
Just to the department, yes.
Okay.
My words are failing me. Friday afternoon.
It's that simple. Just write something to the department.
I did. And I said, hey, this is what I've seen. I've been out of school like 10 years now. Certainly the name, the school, all the things have done me well, but I do feel like I was not able to get that IP job, even though I had like the classes. So long story short, to my great surprise, I said, actually, it's so wonderful that you sent us that, because we had been talking about how we can beef up the hospital molecular program.
Oh, wow.
Or the infection control program, and that they subsequently started a infection control certificate that following fall. Okay. Complete with like internship opportunities. And the program, I think, has been around for like 13 to 15 years, I think.
Okay.
And many of their graduates of the program or the certificate are able to come right out and get IP jobs, which is not the norm.
Yes. Yes.
So that's how I did it. I just spoke up, didn't think anything would come of it. And that's that.
So for any MPH students who might be listening, or people who are aspiring to be MPH students, then there are certificate programs directly targeting infection prevention. There are. You just kind of have to look for them.
There are USF, University of South Florida has one. University of Michigan has one. I want to say Loyola in Chicago has one.
Okay. All right.
Those are just from when I looked. Those many years ago.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm sure there are more now, but yeah, there are IP programs. And I think they're great. I think because all the allergies, they can help you, right? They can help you do that isolation list, right?
Yes,
but
absolutely.
There's other things that you need to, to learn as an IP. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the things, my background is lab.
Okay.
And so like you, I took a lot of ologies.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I really appreciated about my lab background, primarily during the pandemic, was being able to talk to clinicians about the intricacies of viruses and how they replicate and how they survive on surfaces and things like that, because the guidelines were coming so quickly and changing so quickly.
Right.
It made frontline staff very uncomfortable. But in some of those moments, I was able to kind of go back to the more basic virology and say, hey guys, based on what we know, this is how viruses react to this and this and this. This is how viruses react to, temperature and humidity and things like that. So I love the ologies. I love the ologies because yes, they give me it's almost secret knowledge. Because there's so few of us.
I know people within the last 10, 15 years who were the first MPH IPs at their facilities. So it's still the road has changed, but it's still much to be done.
There still is a climb there. It's
a climb. But I think with more mandatory reporting, and then other times there's sometimes hospital epidemiologists embedded in the hospital, but also like a state employee. There's some states that have that kind of mashup. So I think with that, it's gotten better. And also when I was at South Carolina the first time, I was like to APIC, I said, well, we have like HAI, like mandatory reporting. And so you're going to kind of see more of these, public health epidemiologists, HAI epidemiologists. Is there a public health section? Because there are things that we may need to discuss. Then also at that time, CSTE had a lot of like HAI fellow, that was one of their new like fellowship topics. Was this
for education, the conversation you had with APIC?
Yes.
Well, that conversation providing education.
For meeting education, and also for like, they have like little communities, online and things like that. And I was like, it would be good to have that. And I know I did look, and they do still have that community. And so I really felt, I guess, impassioned that, we, at that time, I was just had an MPH, can do the job, especially if we're now mandated to do this reporting.
You exemplify for me the power of just asking questions.
Thank you.
Just saying, hey, I know this. Have you guys considered it?
Yeah.
Because many times when I don't ask those questions, it's because I say to myself, somebody has to be thinking about this.
Right.
But sometimes there isn't,
Correct.
and even if someone has been asking the question, adding another voice kind of gives weight to
reliability.
So, yes, absolutely. So where we had 2 voices last week, now we have 3. Someone is going to look at that and go, hey, this is something that we need to look over.
Right. Yeah.
All right. You took your associate IPC kind of after nursing school and before your infection preventionist job.
My second IP job.
Oh, your second IP job.
Yeah. So I had that. I was working as a IP, preparing to transition to move to Atlanta. And I knew that I needed or wanted some letters behind my name to kind of give my resume a boost. So I fully intended on taking the CIC.
Okay.
But at that time,
what stopped you from taking the CIC?
They were doing some kind of revamping. So it wasn't available at that time.
Oh, okay.
And so I said, well, okay, some letters is better than no letter behind my name. So at that time you could pay to take like a practice test, which was for the CIC. And really the questions are very similar. They're just a little bit harder on the CIC. And so I took the test, I passed. The 50, the test cost $50. I think it was like 50 questions. I took the little practice. I studied some, not as much as probably I should have, but I was in between moving, but I passed.
There was a lot of life going on.
It was a lot of life, but I passed. I got my a-IPC, and I wholeheartedly feel that boosted my resume when I did start applying for jobs in Atlanta. I actually got my job in Atlanta before, I think I probably signed the acceptance letter before I came. So I was able to
yes.
I wholeheartedly believe that, because
so that credential you think just added a lot more weight.
It did.
Even though you have your MPH, you have your RN, just it showed that you were serious about this work. You weren't just kind of trying out infection prevention for functions.
Correct. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is nice. All right. So a few things that you mentioned in your letter: smaller facilities that have a single IP are more likely to hire an RN. Do you find, now that you have trained as an MPH, you have trained as an RN, and you have all of your IP experience,
right?
In what ways are RNs better equipped to take on the sole IP role?
I feel like there's some critical thinking skills there that you kind of learn in nursing school. I think sometimes, I think also the ability to like remain calm in a, when things happen on Friday at 5:00.
Can I tell a story?
Yes.
So I'm a lab rat, and patient care is, we come in to take your fluids. That's about it. Yeah. And I had just started a job at a hospital, and I am in the space where I'm just kind of wandering the hospital, kind of getting the lay of the land. Yeah. And a patient coded in the ICU. And I was kind of losing it a little bit. I had never seen a patient code, and I was and these nurses and doctors just like they have done this 1,000 times. Yeah. They go in there and they do their work like they're serious, but they are not my level of, sweaty and just, and I was like, wow, you guys are amazing. You guys are amazing.
It's funny you say that, because I hadn't really thought about that as part of my answer. If you're not okay, or that's not your forte, well, lots of abuse back in the day. You might have been like a basement dweller with your, your spreadsheets and things like that, but that's not how it is now. So you're kind of expected to go in there and round and look at Foley's and look at lines and look at LVADs and all the things. So if you're not comfortable at that stage in your career, not saying you can't get there, but if you're like, I don't know if I like IP, but not this part of IP, I think that could be, a hindrance. But I just think as a single IP, I feel like a nurse may have more knowledge about some things, and more calm, and just more ability to kind of like do the clinical with, their peers and higher above. I'm not saying that has to be, I just know what I see in practice when people are hiring, that absolutely, if you're a single IP, many times, not all the time, because I have seen some single IPs, and I take my hats off to them. I don't ever want to be a single IP. And in very rare instances, do I think it's appropriate. Like, you got to be like a 25 bed, 50 bed hospital. It's just too much to do in infection prevention to be a single IP, in my opinion. But from what I see, now I'm not saying MPH can't, but what I've seen in practice and what I've heard others who've been in the field for a while is that if you're looking to get in, when you have an MPH credential, and I want to get away from saying just, because I've always been told, just minimizes, and it flows in your vocabulary, but I want to be careful not to minimize, because it's a huge accomplishment.
We are not minimizing any credential whatsoever.
Right. Yes. But I
general
feel like
disclaimer.
I feel like just hospitals in general, that's what they kind of put out there, right? You'll see the ad, the job description, RN required, CIC required. Yes. But if you go to a hospital that has like 7 IPs or 5 IPs, then they may be more willing to have someone who has an MPH, or have someone who's an RT. We've got RTs on our team, on our bigger team. We've got all manner of people, right, have something to give. I've worked with other IPs who are lab, who are had their medical laboratory license, so it just from a standpoint of me giving advice, that's what I've seen, is that bigger hospitals are more likely to give someone who has an MPH a chance, but they hold on tight to that RN when it's like single.
Now, I'm going to ask you the other side of that question, so pardon the head scratcher. In what way would an MPH be as well prepared for a single IP role?
Man, somebody who may have had like an internship, possibly, somebody who's maybe worked in a hospital in another like capacity, potentially, maybe in the lab or lab adjacent, but also I think somebody who is certified, somebody who shows that they are interested, like you said, not just playing with the IP, right?
Yes.
Like they've got their CIC or a-IPC, they belong to APIC, they're networking, they're doing all the things. But someone who, who is eager to learn, who has the personality and stamina, right, to deal with IP. IP can be, it can be a lot, right? And so I think sometimes when we think of data, we don't think of, the other part of IP saying, hey, to this physician or to this manager or to this executive, we really need to do ABC because y'all are doing X, Y, Z, right? So I think somebody who comes across in their interview as confident, as a team player, as someone who can be a fair leader, right? Because part of IP in many hospitals, you are considered kind of like part of the leadership team in some form of, some form of capacity. Like my first IP job, I could wear scrubs. Then after that was a wrap. I can't wear scrubs, even though I'm always going in hospital rooms. I miss those days. But you're considered kind of part of the leadership team, and so I just think MPH students, prepared
MPH
IP
graduates,
they can certainly do it. I just think I don't know. I don't know what the road has changed, but it's just still. I've seen positions as recently as this week. RN, CIC required. Like I just feel like we let the perfect get in the way of the good, and at some point we can't complain that we're losing our IPs.
And there's a shortage, and
when there's
like
a shortage, but you're not willing to educate and to train. And the other thing about IP is, no need to front. The turnover can be high and in quick order. I don't think people understand how much there is to know as an IP, right? So just give people a chance. People have to learn. Give people a chance.
I think in any case, we're going to talk about the CIC next. So without getting into certification, a public health graduate
Correct.
and an RN, both coming into IP, have a lot to learn about the other side of IP practice. Right. The public health graduate has a lot to learn about clinical aspects. The nurse has a lot to learn about running a program and, data management and things like that. And so in my opinionated opinion, here comes the a-IPC or the CIC, and I'll focus on the CIC. In my opinionated opinion, I think the CIC should be considered an equalizer. A certification that says, we do not care that you have an MPH. You are accredited to do the work of infection prevention. We do not care that you are an RN or that you are a lab rat or that you are, a respiratory therapist. What do you think of that opinion?
I think I wholeheartedly agree. At that point, they've already shown the dedication to being an infection. First off, CIC is expensive. It's not a cheap certification. So unless their job paid for it or something, they didn't just come by it, by happenstance. And I think it shows that they're dedicated. They want to learn. They want to be in the field. I do feel like the CIC for some facilities, can be an equalizer. I think what happens then is sometimes it comes down to the amount of time and how long you've practiced. Experience. And so that's where that comes. But I think all things considered, an RN with the CIC and an MPH with the CIC, depending on the facility, would have equal footing. I think the problem is when you've got somebody who has an MPH and somebody who has an RN, and that's when kind of it starts, like who can do it better and who can do it better. And I just having had both, like you said, I think there's people on on my team, and not just like my media team, just the global team, who may be really good at data, right? But they, prior to this, had no clinical experience, but they saw enough of them to say, hey, we need your expertise in the data, and you can learn the clinical. So I think you just have to, facilities have to just look into that applicant and see what they are capable of and not make blanket decisions. And that also goes for HR. How is the job description written, right?
And how is an application assessed after it comes in?
Correct. And not just assessed after it comes through, but what are we putting out there as a job description? Are we being too tight? Because a position open for 2-3 months, is it because you don't have any qualified applicants? Or is it because, there's something amiss on the other side?
Your requirements are too strict.
Because people always want to be IPs. There's so many people I see. So what's happening?
Yeah. I spoke to a hospital leader, Chaz Rohn. He's been a guest on the show. And he talked about how he asks his HR to send him every applicant.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That way, he has this broad scope. He can vet the applicants himself, given all of his experience and all of his knowledge, because someone in HR is not going to know what to look for apart from what is written in the job description.
Absolutely.
So you have, going back to your letter, you have several things that you have stated as advice for people who want to get into IP. I am going to just kind of state one of the bullet points, and then I will let you kind of talk about what you were thinking and expound on that.
Sure.
So you talked about reaching out to your local APIC chapter.
Correct.
Why is that important for someone trying to get into IP?
So you can just kind of, most IPs are a part of APIC. So maybe you can just say, hey, is it possible I can just sit in on a meeting? Do you have any open forums, any open meetings? Sometimes APIC chapters will do community type things, especially if there's like a pandemic or something very big going on in the community. See what you can do. I think, and that way you're putting your face out there. Say, hey, I am interested in infection prevention. And you can maybe say, hey, if if a job comes open at your facility,
exactly,
I'm here, I'm ready to learn. And that way, I think it's just good networking, putting yourself out there. I'm interested, because that's why we're here. And getting into infection prevention can be tough, unnecessarily tough, I think. So sometimes you just have to kind of go back to square one and put your name out there, face out there. And also you can learn things. But yeah, I think that's a good start.
Okay.
Go to
so
APIC.
Reaching out to your local APIC chapter and making connections, but also a thing that you keep saying is willingness to learn.
Yes.
And I'd like to highlight that because in my 17 years in IP, there are very few days that I went to work and did not learn something.
Correct.
there is always something like, okay, I did not know that. So willingness to learn is extremely, extremely important in infection prevention. Dovetailing into reaching out to your local APIC chapter, networking with IPs. So I know there are certain places where APIC chapters are not very active, or there just isn't an APIC chapter for one reason or another. Do you have any advice on how to network with IPs outside of the APIC chapter?
Gosh, that's kind of a hard one. See what see what connections you may have at the hospital in general, and see if you can find out who the IP is, or sometimes a lot of IPs work with the health department. So if you're at the health department and wanting, but yeah, it can be tough when you're not in a larger one. But then there should be virtual things. There may be chats, or post some things online, or LinkedIn for sure. Yeah, yes. LinkedIn, just see what's out there, sign up for, I guess, like an infection prevention, I guess probably a tag or a hashtag or something like that, so you can get that kind of, and just kind of insert yourself in there. It doesn't necessarily have to be a paid thing, but just, hey, I post on people's responses all the time, and you start making connections, and people see your name, and Not everything has to cost. Sometimes we just have to put the work in to get, the outcome. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There is a young lady who I unfortunately lost touch with. I met her when I was working at my last facility, and we had a junior volunteers program during the summer.
Okay.
High school students who were interested in healthcare careers, they would come and volunteer in the hospital. And she was one of those who, I think she was like a junior in high school. Okay. And she's like, after I gave my presentation about what IP is, she's like, I want to be an IP. I'm like, okay. And so, that was one of the ways that we made a connection, and I kind of tutored her through some of the things that helped her through some of the things that she wanted to do. So she I remember the last I heard of her, she went to med tech school and became a medical lab scientist, and is working her way to become an IP. So I hope she's made it. But
I hope so too.
I bring that up to say volunteering in hospitals is a good way of kind of networking.
Find internships, shadow, all the things,
Exactly. You mentioned the APIC Infection Preventionist Career Development and Advancement Guide.
Yeah.
Where can someone find that document?
That is on APIC. You can kind of type in exactly that, like the development guide, and you should be able to pull it up. It is. I tried to post it on LinkedIn separate from that in case people don't want to read that 5-page document. But you can easily find it. It's something new that they have. I think APIC themselves are really trying to recruit, I guess, more IPs, let people know, because they have said at times, yes, our workforce is constantly revolving, but not only that, a lot of the workforce is, kind of looking to sunset, their career, and the turnover is such, they want people to know what they're getting into and what that road, to IP can look like. I think to kind of prevent some of that turnover and things like that.
Yeah, I will add that into the show notes so that for any listeners, they can just click on it. You mentioned the associate IPC and CIC study groups. So we're kind of going back to certification. Anything more you want to add on the value of certification?
I think it gives you, even the a-IPC, right? And I love that they came up with that because you don't have to have an attestation, right? You don't have to say, like with the CIC, you have to say, hey, I'm working on this hospital doing this, and you have to attest that
I am doing the IP work.
Correct. Yes. And speaking of, that was one of the reasons why I never got it when I was younger, because we were in this very weird, space. So I love the a-IPC because, and I think it even says in the description, it's for those who are interested in infection prevention, new to their career, that kind of thing. So I think there are study groups. A lot of times APIC chapters will have study groups. There's some links online. I mean, in my letter, there's I think it's a CIC study group. I can't remember. There's a
CIC study group.
The study group, they don't post too many new videos, but what they post is still relevant, right? It's still relevant to what we talk about. So I think getting the a-IPC, A, gives you a leg up. B, it's for some certifications, it's not, it's costly, but it's not as costly as some certifications.
Yes, but it shows you that it shows employers that you're serious about this.
You're not just getting it. And I love what they did. I'm very happy that APIC, because I think they did it because they saw the need. Well, not only they saw the need, but they heard the rumblings of people wanting to be, to be certified. So I wholeheartedly recommend that taking a-IPC if you're interested in IP. Yeah.
And you have a statement regarding if you're currently in graduate school, you talk about internships and projects. Talk more a little bit about that. A lot of graduate schools, you either have a thesis to write or some kind of project or something. And so one of the things, like I said, I mentioned at Michigan, we didn't have that per se specifically for hospital epi. So now they have this infection control certificate, and they help you find something specifically in infection prevention. So if you are in graduate school, focus on a project that
is related to infection prevention. Maybe you're interested in minority health, but you could say, hey, like, I see that there's a lot of minorities who may be more at risk for SSI or sepsis or something like that. You can still work your passion into infection prevention, and see if you can get an internship. Talk to your professors, go to the guidance or the career office and see if they have connections, and say, maybe I can shadow the IP for a little bit. Maybe I can do this. That's the time to really kind of wet your whistle, in IP, so that when you
get an idea of what the job is like, because any job that we want to do without really knowing what it's like, we romanticize, and then you get in and you're like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to do what?
So, I mean, I never imagined that I would be having to like map the way out of the hospital of a positive COVID patient, shutting down elevators. But, so when people talk about COVID, I'm like, there are so many things that you have no earthly clue what all had to be done to keep people safe.
Yes. Construction, sewage blowouts, water failure. Like, there's so much.
Oh, yeah. On a Friday, always at 5 too.
Friday, 4:45. I'm getting ready to leave to leave work, and somebody calls.
Correct.
Just don't answer. You talk about online infection control certificates. So you mentioned University of South Florida. I will add all of these links into the show notes for any listeners who are interested. And I'm sure there are other universities that provide infection control certificates. So these certificates, are they for someone who already has a master's? You're kind of adding on to your master's program, or are they part of a master's program?
A little of both. So some of them are their own like program, and then some of them are, in addition. So maybe you're getting your master's in, maybe you're doing behavioral health education, but you still kind of have a love for infection, control. So you could get that certificate in addition to it. So it just depends on the school and how it's written. But I do believe, I really want to say Loyola has an actual master's in infection prevention.
Wow. Okay.
Last I checked.
Yes. And then your last piece of advice is do not give up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Say more about that, please.
I mean, if you study the trajectory of from graduating, oh my gosh, it's hard to even say, in 2002 to when I first became an IP in like 2019, I think, 18, 19. That's a long time.
Yes.
That is a long time. And I just kind of kept at it. I wouldn't say that it was like my end game or goal, but it was always kind of in the back of my mind. And then I knew when I went to nursing school that I would not, deal with patients long term. Like, that wasn't my goal. I love patients. As a matter of fact, I just recently was like, maybe I get a little part time, and I was like, no.
No.
I was like, I'll volunteer. But I love patients. I love what I do. But public health, honestly, is my first love. And there's a time, I think, when you can do a lot of macro work, and there's a time when you feel called to do some more micro work. And I feel like this is more of a micro time in my life versus like, I've done the big stuff, right? I've done policy, I've done state, and this is just more of a micro time for me. And I would just say, don't give up. I definitely believe in each one, teach one. I've talked to a lot of people who are interested in IP. I've given ideas. I have no qualms about, posting different jobs. There are more good people than not. And so I think infection prevention, we're educators by nature, right? And so if you just find the right one or find someone, I promise you they could talk your head off about something, and we'll be happy for you to learn. So I just think you just have to keep trying and reach out with someone, and hopefully the wheels will keep turning into less, like you said, if you're certified, you're certified. Now, I can see if you don't, then that's kind of a different thing, because you're faced with a lot of different aspects. But I do know, I know people who've had MPHs and they're single IPs, which I think is like a fantastic. I feel like hats off to you. I wouldn't want to do it, but I think it is awesome that someone saw enough of you to say that you can run this program. You can do it. So we run the gamut, and I think that a lot of hospitals really do themselves a disservice by holding so tight to job descriptions that really don't reflect today's world. And in the end, patients suffer, your staff who's there suffer, and it just becomes a long-term problem, and can also set up the door for like a revolving door too, right? Because your remaining people are like, hey, can you just hire somebody?
Yes.
Just anybody,
Yes.
Anybody, just hire somebody while you're looking at these applicants like they look pretty good to me, and then they're all like, no.
and another thing is, kind of there are certain aspects of IP work that pile up in the absence of an IP.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
So you do end up hiring someone who comes in and they see this big mess, and they sometimes they just don't stay long. They look at the mess and they go, you know what? No.
Absolutely.
And they leave, and you're back where you started, so
yeah. And it's like a revolving door. I have seen that, and it's not unique to any facility. It's just kind of how it is. I think I found with IP, it's one of two things. They've come from the floor, and it's too like numbery for them. They're like, I got to get back, or they come and they're like, oh, this is not what I was, maybe I still want some patient care. Let me do like some education. Or like you said, you have somebody that comes in and the staffing has been stymied for a while, right? And so you're coming in and, you're wanting them to learn. They're trying to learn the job, and you're trying to learn them the what we need you to do. And they don't, oftentimes are disparate. So, but it's not unique to IP. It's, but.
Yeah. I have found that, especially for sole IPs, someone starting new in infection prevention in a sole IP role without some kind of a mentor does not survive very long.
No.
Because even with certification, learning a new facility and how things are done, it is a pretty steep climb. So
it is.
I will add to your list, get a mentor.
Yes.
And as you alluded to, I get very excited when people ask me about my job. And I think most people do, especially those of us who are in jobs that are not well understood. So yes, any listeners or people who are listening who have a grandchild who needs direction, you know what, ask an IP, what do you do, and how can I do that when I grow up, and
they'll be wanting you to be quiet after a while.
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely, we will give you the full download. One last question for you, Amber. What do you do for fun? And you are not changing the world of IP and making the path easier for people behind you. What do you do for fun?
I do a lot of crafting. I don't know if you can really see my shirt, but it says "Spread love and kindness, not germs."
Oh wow! So you made that?
I did.
Wow, that is amazing.
I bought the graphic and kind of worked with the words, but yes. And so for Red Heart Day, we got our American heart sign.
We're red, yes.
We're red, yes. But also, I'm also an infection preventionist, so we're not spreading any germs over here.
Nice, nice.
So I like to craft all things. I do sublimation. I am a hoarder of graphics that I hardly ever use, but
they will come in use at some point.
Yes, they will. I buy a lot of graphics. I refuse to give up my subscription. And I'm like, I need, but I just like to craft. I've tinkered with a myriad of things. But I like the sublimation. Quilling I like because it's like with your hands and really, but yeah, crafting really soothes my soul. So I like to craft. I like to cook. And I have 2 dogs. And so spend a lot of time with them.
Nice. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Amber, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. And for those of you who want to keep up with Amber, she is on LinkedIn, and she's very responsive. I will say that.
Thank you.
I will say that.
Thank you. And thank you, Ivan, for the opportunity. I really wholeheartedly believe each one teach one. So whenever I can, I like to give back. that's just who I am and what was installed in me. Just side note, my grandmother was in World War II. She was a Black nurse, one of the first. And she wrote a letter decreeing racism like 80 years ago. We still have that letter. And so sometimes I think, well, should I speak up or should I do this? And then I think, girl, do you know what your grandmother and your grandfather did for you? Then so you just speak up.